Hello. Good afternoon. I am Tricia Ains. I am moderator of Irvine United Congregational Church. Welcome to the beloved congregants, friends, community leaders, and clergy members gathered here today. We are so very pleased that you are here to celebrate Pastor Sarah's installation with us. The installation is a joyous rite of our church as we formalize the partnership between pastor and congregation in the presence of all of you. We are especially delighted to welcome home our pastor emeritus, the Reverend Fred Plummer, as well as the Reverend Steve Swope, who served as interim, and the Reverend Sarah Everett Phillips, who served for many years with our ministry with young people. We learned just yesterday that our pastor emeritus, the Reverend Dr. Paul Tellstrom, was called away to serve at the Central Association's representative at another installation taking place in Los Altos. So we are really very disappointed, but we hope that he may be able to join us for the reception afterwards. So hold a good thought for that. It is a great blessing to have them and you grace our sanctuary again today. As you know, we took a bold step when we called Pastor Sarah in the midst of a global pandemic. We have faced many, many challenges together as we sought to stay connected during troubled times. Through it all, she has stayed strong, flexible, and upbeat, and we are so very grateful for her leadership. We are thrilled to finally tie the knot after 2 years of living together. Thanks to all of you for being here today to show your love and support for Pastor Sarah as we continue to write this chapter in the life of our church. The pandemic helped us lean further into our green faith, and so we only printed, I think, a small number of bulletins. We will lead you through the service on the screen, but if you'd like to follow along, you can download a bulletin by using the QR code, which should magically appear. There it is. There will be a reception following the service, and you are all cordially invited to stay and enjoy the experience and connect with IUCC friends and community members as we break bread together. Welcome.
Please stand in body or spirit as we sing together our processional hymn. It's in your hymnal next to you in your chair, number 391, In the Midst of New Dimensions. We'll sing all 5 verses, and also the words will be in front if you would like to follow along that way.
our call to worship. There are different gifts. There are varieties of ways to serve God. God works through people in different ways. Each one is given gifts by the Spirit to use for the common good.
Let us sing together again. This is the song One Spirit of Love, and you can find the text on in front on the video screens. Please stand and body your spirit. Many are the wonders of God, many doors open wide, many roads that are still untraveled. Many are the gifts that we share, many burdens we bear, many mysteries still unraveled. Many gifts, one spirit of love, one spirit of love. Many gifts, one spirit of love, one spirit of love. Some will be the teachers of life, some the preachers of love, some the fathers and some the mothers. Some will be the ones who will care, some will listen and share, serving God while they serve each other. Many gifts, one spirit of love, one spirit of love. Many gifts, one spirit of love, one spirit of love. Living in the body of Christ, and the heart of the earth, and the hands that will break new ground. Celebrate the gifts from within. Now it's time to begin. God's people can turn the world around now. Many gifts, one spirit of love, one spirit of love. Many gifts, one spirit of love, one spirit of love. One spirit of love, one spirit of love.
IUCC's Pastoral Search Committee included Eduardo Arizmendi Pardee, Tricia Ains, Connie Jones, Aidan Mitchell, Craig Tyrrell, the Reverend Ken Wyant, and me. As chair of the search committee, I'm pleased to represent this wonderful group of caring and hardworking people. I'm proud to having served with them. Our search committee reviewed the credentials of more than 30 clergy who responded to our job posting with the United Church of Christ. Of course, in doing this review, we did what search committees do. We made lists, we awarded points, we had a rubric keyed to key elements of the job description. And it's worth at least noting that nobody outpointed Sarah. But look, describing the search committee's spirit-led engagement with her is not about rubrics and not about points. Instead, it's a story of coming to know and in due course coming to recommend to the congregation an exceptionally talented and exceptionally well-prepared spiritual leader. We came to know Sarah's commitment to progressive Christianity. In her words, quote, Our theology influences our action in the world. Understanding Jesus' ministry in his own cultural context, his outreach to the outcasts of society, his rejection of a corrupt institution, and his defiance of the occupying empire, all of these influence the way we interact with our society, to be mindful of those who live outside the margins, to recognize the faults of our religious institutions, and to be cognizant of who's in power and who's left out. Interacting with Sarah and viewing her in the pulpit via the internet, we came to appreciate her engaging and creative sermons. We asked all candidates to articulate and demonstrate commitments to open and affirming embrace of LGBTQ plus persons and to social justice causes. Well, Sarah had recently taken her previous congregation to an open and affirming commitment, and in her words, quote, "My ministry has been marked by the call to include the marginalized and the oppressed, whether they are from the LGBT community, whether they are low-wage workers, immigrants, interfaith brothers and sisters, or any who find themselves in the minority." The search committee saw Sarah's organizational talents for leading and collaborating. They're there in her record. And she persuaded us that she was equipped to lead and encourage programs that are attractive to young people and young families. Sarah's commitment to racial and ethnic diversity and inclusion were made plain in Sarah's life history and in her clarion responses to our questions. And Sarah's history and responses to us concerning community engagement were affirmed by strong voices from within our broader community in Irvine and surrounding communities. Adding his voice to others in our region, Rabbi Stephen Einstein testified, quote, "She walks with workers who are managing unfair labor practices. She walks with immigrants who face deportation and with every religious, racial, and ethnic group that suffers discrimination." Finally, and critically, Sarah touched our hearts in a process that we feel deeply was led by the Spirit. When the congregation overwhelmingly voted to call her as our next senior pastor, a unanimous search committee knew in our hearts, in our minds, and in our spirit that it was right. It was deeply right. And much more will continue to feel right as together we forge IUCC's future.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I greet you with the Islamic greeting of peace. When I was asked to say a few words about Sarah on behalf of the Interfaith Council, I was excited, as there's so much to say about her, so many good things. But then I was told that it needs to be done in a couple of minutes. I thought to myself, man, a simple task, needlessly made complicated. So here it goes. I first met Sarah several years ago at my mosque in Irvine. The Interfaith Council was holding a luncheon in support of the indigenous people and their heritage. I was impressed with the program and the organization. Not knowing anyone, I just walked towards the one who looked the most engaged and approachable. After I spoke to Sarah briefly, I was somehow convinced that this is exactly what was missing in my life. Never to waste time, she also convinced me that I was exactly what was missing on the board of directors. You see, taking it slow is not for those who can think fast on her feet, like Sarah does. She made sure that I was welcomed and felt at home in the new home that I call my home, which is the Interfaith Council. I recall leaving many of the board meetings in awe of her creativity and resourcefulness, qualities that are vital for organizations with limited means. And this was even before she was elected the president of the council. See, when you're a natural leader with a clear vision like Pastor Sarah, you don't need titles to lead a group. I'm sure my colleagues from the Interfaith Council will agree. I'm sure President George Okuzi would agree with that. Over the years, I saw her be the driving force for the Interfaith Council. I have seen her attend meetings, take notes, while rocking her baby to sleep. I have seen her not just preach, but practice her version of progressive Christianity with earnestness. I have seen her confront patriarchy so convincingly, I felt like standing up and apologizing on behalf of all men throughout the history of mankind. I have seen her fight for justice for the most vulnerable in our society, whether they are hotel workers or farmers. I have seen her cast a spell on audience with her speech. I have seen her be a force of nature for equality and justice. Over the years, I have seen her doing many wonderful things, but there is one thing I have never seen about her. And I'm not saying that she is the superwoman, but I have never seen Pastor Sarah and superwoman in the same room. Thank you.
Well, I have a confession. I haven't been to church in 4 years. Because as you know, University Synagogue and IUCC have had this partnership for over 30 years. And every year we've alternated between the synagogue and the church in having services at Thanksgiving. But the last few years, of course, because of COVID, we've had to do it online. And what used to be called the Arnie and Fred Show became the Arnie and Sarah Show. And I'm deeply grateful that Sarah, who I have known since she was a teenager, the brightest light in this church, devoted, working with other kids, passionate for justice, just someone who always lit up the room with her exuberance and excitement. When I heard she was going to become a minister, I thought, yes, that's right. And then when I heard she was coming home again, Yes, you can come home again. When I heard she was coming home again to IUCC, yes, yes, yes. It was a perfect, we call in Hebrew a shidduch, a connection, a relationship, a match. It was perfect. Sarah, you are going to do wonderful things here. You were mentored by the many pastors who came before. I don't know how this church does it. It always picks great pastors, great interim pastors, great pastors who stay for a while. It's got an incredible choir. It's got devoted members, bright, diverse, respectful of each other. And who could be the pastor for a church such as IUCC? Well, you picked the person who could be that pastor. University Synagogue joins me in wishing you Mazel Tov. Congratulations. This is a great simcha, a great joyous event for us as well as you. It's wonderful to see everyone back in your home. Yes, one day we will be maskless here, but it's great to see people gathered for such a joyous event. It has been my great pleasure over the years, knowing all the pastors from Fred on, I have to say, being in the building and seeing Fred today is just one of I really missed him. I'm so glad he's here. But I've been comforted by all the wonderful pastors before. And I am just overjoyed with Sarah, Dr. Sarah, Reverend Dr. Sarah, who doesn't need all those titles to be the wonderful pastor for you she has been the last 2 years and will continue to be far into the future. Mazel tov, everybody.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, the creator of all of us. Let me at the outset thank the God today for this afternoon, beautiful afternoon, and I sincerely appreciate this invitation, Sarah. In my also 2 minutes, I would like to join you all in celebrating my sister and our Reverend Dr. Sarah Halverson, who shall continue to serve and pastor this community and beyond with the gifts she is blessed with. Like Jesus, that radical reformer who was most drawn to the forsaken, the despised, the marginalized, and those who had stumbled and fallen, Reverend Sarah's ministry shall also be that of inclusion of the unwanted and the outcast, forced to live in the shadows and who are more likely to be dismissed than noticed, more likely to be mocked than revered. Unlike the prevalent norm of transactional relationships, Reverend Sarah's ministry in the footsteps of Jesus shall foster transformational relationships for this community and beyond. Similarly, unlike the collective psyche of our nation today that seems to have taken root in hubris, I know Reverend Sarah's ministry shall be grounded in Micah: do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. So today, I pray that may my dear sister and our pastor, Reverend Dr. Sarah Halverson, be blessed with spiritual strength and prophetic patience to heal our broken world with her generous pastoral care for this community and beyond. Amen.
This is your call to the offering, and the offering today will go to the Southern Association of, wait for it, the Southern California Nevada Conference of the United Church of Christ, which is the body that ordains and installs and gave both Sarah and I guidance and a scholarship when we were seminarians. And the money you give today will go half to future UCC ministers so that they can have a scholarship too, and half to the running of the Southern Association so that we can have our wonderful staff who keeps us informed and so we know what the heck we're doing. We are part of a movement, of a nationwide body, and by donating, we strengthen that body. Thank you.
Let us pray. Lord, there is obvious benefit in receiving, and there is great benefit in giving too. May all who give and receive this offering find your blessing. Amen.
This is from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 13, verse 15. And I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding.
Doesn't this thing go up or down? Never mind. It's okay. Right there. It'll be fine.
I can help you.
Where is it?
Exciting, huh?
We'll be here all night. Okay, it's ready. Well, let me first say the obvious. It is indeed a pleasure and indeed, I guess, an honor to be here with all of the great pastors that Sarah knows and someone that had to listen to me for, oh gosh, a long time. For those of you who don't know me, let me quickly give you a little bit of history. But let me also say that this is not going to be a normal sermon that you might hear at this type of event. When I first candidated for coming to Irvine, I had no idea what to expect, what it meant to be a clergy person in a church, number one, with no buildings and very, very small congregation. As a matter of fact, when I asked them who was the group that was going to visit with me to find out a little bit about me, they said, well, the whole church will. And that's
pretty much what we did. Although I had spent 3 years in seminary, which was a wonderful educational experience, I did not learn much about how to run a church, let alone how to build a church family. Then I called one of the numbers I had for a geodesic building. It turns out that this was a friend of my brother's who I had met some years before in a completely different setting, and we got together and started plotting out something we might be able to do here. Then I called several numbers for contractors to see if they could come out and help us figure out how to do something. And when they found out I didn't have any money, and the church didn't have any money, they kind of disappeared. But I called this one guy that said, "Fred, I think I can help you." I said, "Okay, what can we do?" And he said, "I know about a building in Santa Ana that's a bank, and we can bring it out. They want to get rid of it." I said, "Well, that sounds pretty good. I like that." So I went over and looked at it, and it was a square, little weird building, but it looked like it might work. So I didn't know they were going to bring it over in pieces, but the next month we paid our little dues to him, and we had 2 buildings, actually they cut it in half, sitting out there on the dirt. Now this is the Irvine Company. So I got a phone call. I went to talk to the big boys. They said, "What are you doing? You can't just leave that out there." And I said, "Well, we're working on a plan." Fortunately, these people said, "Well, put a fence around it and we'll let it stay for 6 months." And that's what we did. I believe when we decided to become an open infirmary church, we actually had a jump in membership. We continued to grow, and somewhere along the way, we realized that we had to build something even bigger, and you are now experiencing that. But what I really want to tell you is for me to share this with you, this may not be very exciting for some of you that are new here, but when we were going through that and trying to plan and bring in people and all the things you do when you're trying to build a church, that was 40 years ago. 40 years ago. How many of you are, like, say, 40, if you want to raise your hand? I'm kind of curious. You are the millennials. You are the millennials that we've been studying and trying to figure out how to get you in here. With some success, but not a great deal. In 1984, when we were here, my lovely wife and I, for the first time, I knew I could only survive in a UCC church. Churches were popping up all over this area. It was like popcorn. I learned early that the United Church of Christ was the only church that I could last in. So I stayed with it, and we stayed with it together. But 1/2 of the churches the UCC churches in 1950s have survived. The first 40 years. And now we have another 40 years and another half. The UCC denomination, which I am so proud of, has chopped itself in half twice. This is happening to all mainline denominations. I'm not trying to say it's the UCC, but it's something that we need to be aware of. Not long before the web came into the world, it changed and still is changing things. One thing we did not know that we do now know. We can learn a lot more about Christianity from Also, this was a time when there was an amazing amount of universities, colleges, with scholarship coming out in hands over hands over hands. People like Marcus Borg, John Dominic Crossan, Val Webb, Elaine Pagels, Robert Funk, Bishop Spong, Bart Ehrman, Megan Good. I could go on and on. They were studying Jesus. And they made a lot of new thoughts, new things that we in the pulpit had to deal with if we were going to be really clear and honest. I could go on with the scholars in religious studies, that most of them were college, university scholars who radically changed our understanding of Christianity. At one point, I counted over 600 books I had purchased, or had been given, I must admit, in my private library. When I retired, I gave away half of those books, and I still have over 150 books in my library. Here's the point. If a pastor is still preaching Christianity like one of the many of us learned in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, he or she is missing a lot of what's really happening with scholars, universities, the whole world. Unfortunately, the new story has not reached most churches today. I assure you, you are not hearing sermons about Jesus and his blue eyes, his white skin, or his Christian ways. If you are, you're not getting the true story. Let me give you a simple idea. For one thing, Jesus, hold on here, was Jewish. Don't let that disturb you. He was born a Jew, he followed Jewish law, he died a Jew. And yes, coincidentally, he had dark skin and may have had a large nose. That's all we know for a fact. Let me give you another example. There's now a growing movement among scholars who have argued that much of the substance of the story of Jesus was radically influenced by Paul. Paul wrote his ideas about who Jesus was roughly 20 to 50 years before Mark, Matthew, Luke, or John were even written. I know this is a scholarly point that may mean little to normal church folks, but it's an enormous change for scholars and preachers. What we are talking about may sound like a lecture of modern Christianity, but believe me, it's what we are coming to, or we're not. I gave a talk in Australia a few years ago trying to explain what happened to the millennials. Now, let me be clear. A few of you may remember my comments about millennials dropping out of church from some of my last sermons when I was here. I preached, but today the millennials are in their 40s, as I mentioned. They are leaving church in large part because church never fed them. The millennials left and they have not come back. Today, scholars tell us we have a Gen Z. That's another group right behind the millennials. And no surprise, scholars are telling us Gen Zs are not coming back to mainline churches, and they're in their 20s and early 30s. Approximately 7 years ago, Angie Thurston and a man by the name of Castor Kuehl did a deep dive into millennials in churches, and they did 1-year research project to explain that young people want and know some of our institutional churches may not meet their needs. The conclusion was major changes in our churches or we will die in the next few years. When I retired roughly 18 years ago, I became the president of ProgressiveChristianity.org. One of my responsibilities in that capacity was to travel around the country and do workshops and give lectures about the meaning of progressive Christianity and how that can stimulate the interest of the millennials and younger. It turned out not to be a very pleasant job. I was on airplanes. I thought it would be fun going from place to place, but these trips almost killed me. The idea was to pick a sponsoring church and encourage them to invite people from other churches in the area to hear about the changes in Christianity, help them find ways they could grow their own church. And typically I would get maybe 40 to 60 people that would show up. Maybe they were a little younger than 80. The first thing I noticed was that the majority of these church leaders were old. And I mean really old. I know about being old now. Today I can tell you the difference between being in your 60s and your 80s. As I walked out of the door to catch a few deep breaths, several people came up to me and started grabbing me and saying, we want to talk to you, we want to talk to you. And I said, well, let me just take a few minutes. And I literally had to pull an arm off of this one woman that was hanging on to me. Eventually I did get back to them, and it was not a pleasant thing for me. The stories were basically the same. Each used to have a good-sized church, they told me, but they did nothing different year after year after year after year. Their numbers kept going down. Their pastors retired. Some of them lost their buildings. Two of the people lost their buildings. I remember that. And the third one assumed that that was going to happen to them. They each had less than 10 people coming to their respective churches. I'm talking to three people well into their 80s. I talked briefly to each of them and learned that they held onto their pastor for years, and they never made any changes. There's nothing that will kill a church faster than living with the idea that we've always done it that way, and nobody's going to change it. Jesus was first and foremost a teacher. He offered us an opportunity to live a meaningful life, to be conscious of other people, to be loved and respected. The last thing in the world he would have wanted was to be worshiped by an individual. When we get off the track and start worshiping him instead of following his way of living, we run into problems, including dying churches. So as my young millennial colleague, Reverend Brandon Robertson, wrote in this week's Progressive Spirit column, so instead of buying into the narrative that religion is dead, I believe that now may be the moment for religious institutions to commit all the more to doing the hard work of reforming our most rigid systems, reassessing and reasserting most central beliefs and practices, values, and preparing them to welcome once again an entire generation whose trust was lost, but who are longing for the very same thing that we created, meaning making community and purpose. Ken Wilber, in the same article, said, "Religion is the best and only vehicle humanity has to move us through the process of working up, cleaning up, and growing up." So, my dear friends, you have all the tools to be an excellent church, including your pastor. I want you to stop worrying about one service or two services. I want you to stop worrying about whether Sarah is wearing a robe or not wearing a robe. I want you to stop talking about the things that you think she should be doing. I'm certain you have all the tools, ideas, and people willing to work to continue to create a beloved church community you can be proud of. Not necessarily do we want you to copy Fred, nor Paul. This is a new time. This is a new era. I beseech you, go and do the work, the church of 2022. I say go, be joyful, and teach the children and their families who Jesus really was. It's a path worth teaching. Amen.
Reverend Sarah, seeing that you are called to ordained ministry by the grace of God and that the Irvine United Congregational Church has been led to call you as settled pastor and teacher, are you willing to enter this covenant with its members who are one in Christ with us in the Southern Association?
Well, I am willing.
I am willing. Fantastic. And I promise. and pastors here, my rabbis are back there. And thank you all just for your commitment to come out 2 years later and celebrate with all of us. So many people have said congratulations to me, but I really want to say congratulations to us because we've not only survived the last 2 years, we have built back and we are thriving together because we believe that there is a future for progressive Christianity in this world, in this state, and in Orange County. So I'm so excited to be your pastor, and I can't wait for what comes next.
I fell in love. I fell in love with Sarah Halverson before I ever laid eyes on her. Years ago, a member of my Fountain Valley Synagogue, a resident of Costa Mesa, used to bring me copies of the Daily Pilot. Each Saturday, the newspaper published a feature. Several local clergy were asked to respond to a question of current import. Of all the respondents, priests, ministers, imams, and even rabbis, the answers of one stood out. The heartfelt writing of Sarah Halverson simply grabbed me. Her philosophy dovetailed with my own, and she was passionate about it. I often said to myself, if I were looking for a pastor, she would be my choice. Then we met. On a picket line, of course. And now it was love at first sight. I discovered that everything I thought about her was true in real life. We both went on to the board of CLUE, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, and this cemented our friendship. I was going to say at this point that I'm going to give away a secret, but actually Keith already did. And it is this. When the committee was discerning who ought to be the next senior pastor of IUCC, I was interviewed. I said then, and I declare now, I truly believe that Sarah Halverson Cano is the right person for this sacred task at this very time. Now, I know something of the history of IUCC. First of all, it's a joy to see Fred again. It's been many, many years, but when we met again, there was this connection. I knew about the relationship between IUCC and University Synagogue, the friendship between Fred and Arnie, which has continued through the years. But we also hit an immediate place of mutuality, and God bless you in your continuing work. This congregation is renowned as one of the leading progressive congregations in Orange County. Now, we are facing very challenging times. This pastor will remind you over and over again that church is, as lovely as it is, church is not a building. It's not this building. It's not any building. As a matter of fact, church is not really a noun at all. It is a verb. Church is how the members act while they are here and what the members do when they leave. At all times, but especially during these painful days, the pursuit of justice is not simply a nice thing to do. It is a divinely mandated calling. My charge this day to Pastor Sarah is to raise the call. My charge this day to the congregation is to heed the call. I've discovered that the main difference between Sarah and me is not really our theology. It is which liturgical calendar by which we lead our lives. Now, on my calendar, we are in the month of Elul, the last month before the new religious year. And during Elul, we prepare ourselves for the challenges of the future by first reflecting on our past. We are reminded to do this by the daily sounding of the shofar, the ram's horn. The shofar is a call to conscience. It reminds us that we have not always lived up to our higher ideals. And it beckons us to live more faithfully and to devote ourselves to righting the wrongs we see all around us. Hear now the shofar. May its sounds this day unite the hearts of pastor and congregation into a holy covenant, a commitment to bring this world ever closer to the ideals of justice and peace, which Scripture demands of us. If you're able, please rise.
Remain standing and body your spirit as we sing together. Please remain standing and body your spirit as we sing together. Here I am, God. The words will be in the front here. I, the God of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry. I who made the stars of night. I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, God. Is it I, God? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, God, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the God of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept in love of them. They turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, God. Is it I, God? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, God, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the God of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them. My hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, God. Is it I, God? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, God, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
Brothers and sisters, simply in Christ, go out into this post-pandemic, post-religious, post-Christian world with all of its confusion and all of its brokenness and all of its darkness, and carry the light. Be the light. Shine our light together. For God has called us, and we shall respond. Amen.
For moving in this phase. Now we go out to share the good news. Now we go out to share your love. Now we go out to share the good news. Now we go out to share your love. Carry the light, carry the